Manager Brian Snitker just won his 800th game with the Atlanta Braves. Is it possible he comes back next year? Here's what Alex Anthopoulos had to say about that. Yes, welcome on into a special bonus edition of Braves Today, coming to you after Atlanta's 4-1 win against the Chicago Cubs on Monday night. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. You can find all my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. We're part of the Believe Podcast Network, proudly presented to you by FanDuel. And I wanted to take a minute and talk about Brian Snitker, okay? It's a mini episode. It's a bonus episode. Had some thoughts I wanted to get out because two big things happened today. Thing number one, Atlanta's 4-1 win tonight meant that Brian Snitker has now won 800 games as manager of the Atlanta Braves. And the historical context on that is pretty significant. And then also, a couple hours before that happened, Alex Anthopoulos talked to the media in the dugout. He's also lost a bunch of weight, looks really good. It's not a health thing, it was on purpose. But he had some comments about the future of Snit, what discussions they already had, and where it's going to go from here, right? So let's talk about the win first, okay? So 4-1 win by the Braves, win number 800. And what I think is important here is to contextualize that number, that 800 wins. So Brian Snitker took over as interim manager on May 17th, 2016. That is, they fired Freddie Gonzalez. They installed Brian Snitker as interim manager. And then finally, Snitker hired Freddie Gonzalez this season to take over as third base coach. And then the interim label was taken off at the end of the season. Since that date, so since May 17th, 2016, there is exactly one manager in baseball with more wins than Brian Snitker. And that's Dave Roberts. So Brian Snitker has 800 wins. Dave Roberts has 910 in that span. And 800 wins feels like a milestone. A lot of guys in baseball have actually done this, right? Snitker is the 86th manager to win at least 800 games. He's the 43rd to do it with to win 800 with one team. But he's the 12th manager that's only managed that team to 800. Like, he's never been a manager anywhere else. And I think the Braves context of this is worth discussing. Brian Snitker is now third in Braves franchise history in wins. The only people ahead of him are Frank Salee, who his picture's in black and white, if that tells you anything. He is a Hall of Famer. He managed the Boston Bean Eaters from 1890 to 1901. He has 1,004 wins. And then obviously Bobby Cox, 2,149. Both of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. I don't think Brian Snitker will be there. That just doesn't feel like that's in the cards, longevity standpoint, all of that stuff. But recent history notwithstanding, so not counting some of the frustrations we've had this year, and we've had frustrations this year with Brian Snitker, he's been a good manager. When you're thinking about, this is not the place to criticize him, but there are things this season that you wish had been differently, right? The bullpen usage felt a little bit rigid. It was really odd that Snitker was so committed to handedness and platoon stuff on the hitting side, right? Asking Eli White to always bat against lefties because he's right-handed, even though he hits righties better than lefties. His batting average, 239 against righties, 221 against lefties. His OPS is 40 points higher. Like, he's better against righties than lefties. But Snit always did the platoon thing, and Verdugo was the lefty, and then, it was something where White was the righty, and even when it didn't necessarily make sense. And then on the flip side, with the bullpen, Snit was very rigid with the plan. This is the pitching plan, and we are going to follow the pitching plan. And it doesn't really matter what part of their lineup is up. It doesn't matter the handedness of the guys. We're following the plan. When everybody was healthy, right? It was Pierce Johnson in the 7th. It was Joe Jimenez in the 8th. It was Raisel Iglesias in the 9th. Like, it didn't matter who was, when you had to throw a lefty in there, when you had to go Dylan Lee and Pierce Johnson together. It was always a predetermined order, and it didn't matter, right? A little frustrating there. But in his Braves career, he's been one of the ultimate player managers from the perspective of trying to understand these guys and put them in positions where they're confident, they're happy, and they're able to produce. And I know recently the last couple of seasons have been rough. Obviously, there's no denying the last 2 seasons have been rough. But when you go beyond that, and you look at what the Braves have done in Brian Snitker's career, and you look at the 2021 World Series, and that run to the World Series specifically, being able to integrate all of those new guys into the clubhouse at the deadline, that only happens because there's a strong clubhouse culture and there's a strong leader at the top that understands, despite the age difference, the generational gap, how to relate to those guys. And a lot of the tactical decisions that Snitker made down the stretch in 2021 worked. I'm thinking about the NLDS versus Milwaukee, when to deploy Jock Peterson as a pinch hitter. He hit 3 home runs in the postseason. 2 of them were pinch hit homers against the Brewers in the NLDS. Like, Snit nailed exactly when to throw him out there. I think he tagged Brandon Woodruff for one of them. Like, I was at that game. I remember I was sitting like way, like 3rd or 4th level out past the foul pole in right field. But like, Snit just nailed every button. Or the NLCS, the moment to go get Luke Jackson and put Tyler Matzik in the game. Like, Snit just nailed every single decision in that postseason. Even when to pull Ian Anderson in the middle of a no-hitter in Game 3 of the World Series. Yes, he had a bunch of walks. He wasn't super efficient, but he had a no-hitter in the World Series. You know how hard it is as a manager to see a guy throwing a no-hitter in the World Series and say, yeah, we're done. We're pulling you out of this game. 5 innings, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. He faced 18 batters. And Snit said, hey, I'm pulling you from this game. I think he was at like 76 pitches or something like that. I was lucky enough to not only be at Game 3, but have amazing seats. We were down the third base side in the lower level, just under the cover, so we weren't getting drizzled on. But I remember looking over in the Braves dugout and seeing Anderson put a jacket on after the 5th. And I'm like, holy crap, are they taking Ian Anderson out of this game? Yeah. AJ Minter, then Luke Jackson, then Tyler Matzik, then Will Smith. They got out of it. Shutout. 2-0. 2-hitter. Matzik allowed 1. Will Smith allowed 1. And if I remember right, I think they were both singles. Like, Snit he nailed all of those tactical decisions all the way to the World Series. So yes, we're frustrated with who he is now. But in his history, in his career with the Braves, he's been a very good manager. I'm happy that he got 800. I do think it's possibly time to move on and get a new manager. Let's talk about what Alex Anthopoulos said about that. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Chinook Seedery. Absolute best sunflower seeds on the market. They have 8 fantastic flavors. The original is my favorite, but original lemon pepper, jalapeno ranch, Parmesan and pepper, cinnamon toast, dill pickle, hatch chili, and smokehouse barbecue. You can buy, there's a couple different options using promo code BRAVES at ChinookSeedery.com. If you buy the sampler pack, you get one of everything. You get 10% off. They always ship those for free. It does not come with this really cool two compartment bowl. A listener sent this to me to eat my sunflower seeds. One of these Chinook Seedery sampler bags, these 2-ounce bags, fits perfectly in the small section. You put your shells in there when you're done eating. Fantastic gift from a listener. I appreciate that so much. But once you know the flavors you want, you can buy a case, you can buy a variety pack, or you can build your own variety pack. And again, promo code BRAVES gets you 10% off, gets you free shipping on over $40, and it supports Braves Today. So ChinookSeedery.com, promo code BRAVES. That's ChinookSeedery.com, promo code BRAVES. I mentioned it earlier. Alex Anthopoulos spoke to the media today, and he was asked a couple different questions. I want to say probably about 4 or so questions about Brian Snitker's future. I was able to pull a little bit of clips from social media. Here is one was posted by 11 Alive in Atlanta with the biggest, the biggest question being asked in essence was, is this his final year? And they kind of acknowledge it's the last year of his contract. He's going to turn 70 in October. Everyone assumes it's going to happen. What's going to happen? Here's the answer from Alex Anthopoulos directly.
No, I mean, look, Snit's going to be in this organization forever. I mean, I'm not the owner. Obviously, Terry McGurk is in that role as chairman. But Snit will be part of this organization no matter what. Well past when I'm here. He's here, Braves for life. So those are things we always address at the end of the year. We sit down, we talk about staff, we talk about all those things. So our focus the entire year has been on the year, getting through the season, getting through the days. And all those things are things that we always address in the offseason.
And AA went on some other questions. They have not discussed potential replacements. His actual words, quote, "I think it's a completely disrespectful thing to do or even consider." He's the manager of the team. And he was asked, okay, so when are those discussions appropriate? He kind of reiterated the end of the season, right? We've never sat down and said, okay, August 5th or October 5th or whatever. We've always had a very strong organic working relationship about everything. Roster, staffing, all those things. He's going to be a part of this organization. And then AA was asked, do you want it to be announced ahead of time if he is retiring so he can get a little bit of acknowledgement from fans and other teams around baseball? And AA, again, completely deferred. That's none of my business. That's what he said. It's none of my business. He's worked a lot more years in baseball than I've had. He's had a way more successful career than I have. That's an individual thing that's not for me to answer. So obviously the next step is going to be, they need to ask Brian Snitker. They need to find out what he wants. But I do want to go back to something that AA said early this year when he was talking about Snit's contract, because everybody knew he's in the final year of the deal. And again, we expect him to step down. That's the expectation, right? But early this season, I want to say it was maybe spring training, AA said Snit will be the manager as long as he wants to be the manager. That the contract is running out, but if he wants to come back, they'll give him a new one. That he's earned the right to decide when he is done. Now, that was said at a different time in the campaign of the 2025 Atlanta Braves, right? The 2025 Atlanta Braves at that point were still World Series favorites. They were expected to continue their streak of postseason appearances. They were expected to get back to the top of the division that last year was the first time they didn't win in like a decade. These Atlanta Braves are obviously significantly different from those Atlanta Braves. But it's important to point out, and I don't know why I end up being the guy that always tries to not hedge bets, but be the voice of caution here, like I was with Ha-Sung Kim the other day. And Mark Bowman of MLB.com wrote the same column that I did in a podcast. He wrote the same newsletter on Monday afternoon. In the words of Becky Lynch, it's not just me saying it. MLB.com saying it. But there is a possibility that Brian Snitker says, hey, I've been in the organization 49 years, but I don't want my final season to end like this. And he wants to come back and manage one more year. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying it's even likely to happen. But I'm saying it's possible. And we have to think that it is possible because every single public statement that has been made by anybody that is remotely involved in this decision has reiterated and said that it is up to Snit when he wants to come back. And again, just going off of body language and all of that stuff, I'm assuming he's going to want to be done. But we don't know that for a fact. And I just want everybody to know there is a possibility. Now that you're seeing the offense at times look better in the second half with a healthy Jurickson, or with the return of Jurickson Profar, when Ronald Acuna Jr. is healthy, with the resurgence from Michael Harris and Ozzie Albies, that they may want to say, hey, we don't want to get a new manager and have to possibly lose Tim Hires and build a whole new offensive philosophy. Rick Kranitz continues to, when your starters are healthy, and AA mentioned this in that press conference too, that media availability, that obviously injuries decimated them, but at a time, Spencer Schwellenbach and Chris Sale were top 3, top 5 in the Cy Young, respectively, when they got hurt. And so, like, the Braves rotation, it was either rotation or the pitching staff, led baseball in ERA last year. They were really good this year before all the injuries. It's possible that Snit says, hey, Cranny's still here. Hires is still here. Freddie Gonzalez can give us a full season. I want to go ahead and come back and end better than this. I don't want this season to be my final season. I want to coach my 50th season in the organization versus working in the front office or having some sort of advisory role to get him to 50 years. It's possible he says, I want to coach my 50th season. I'll turn 71 after the year. I can celebrate my 71st birthday at the World Series. Again, I don't think it's likely, but it's possible. And because everything we've heard from Alex Anthopoulos, the clip I played, the quotes I read, everything I've heard from Alex Anthopoulos is no decision has been made. We've not even started discussing what to do after Snit. He's our manager, and it's something they will address after the season, depending on what we'll talk about it as a team, like, or as a working group at the end of the year. Again, I don't expect Snit to be here. I put out a newsletter a couple weeks ago with managerial choices, and I thought David Ross made a ton of sense to be the manager for the Braves. But it's possible, and I just want everybody to know there's a, 5% chance, 10% chance he doesn't want to go out like this. But if this is the final season, again, he'll end with more than 800 wins, and he'll be one of just, 12 managers in history to win all 800 with the only team he managed for. And he'll be third in Braves history and second in Atlanta Braves history in wins. And that's pretty cool. This has been a special bonus edition of Braves Today for, I guess, the night of Monday, September 8th. By the time you download this, it's probably going to be midnight, close to Tuesday. But do me a favor, listening on audio, leave a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we put out special stuff like this. And I'll see you next time on Braves Today.